Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Ron Placone and Steph Zamorano, the miserable liberal.
Howdy, howdy.
I
Hi.
am miserable.
Hi. So, we've told you before about the conflicts of interest over at the paper of note, the Washington Post. The Washington Post, which was bought by one of the world's richest men because he cares about democracy. One of the world's biggest predatory capitalists who has a history of crushing local businesses while manipulating the taxes to screw over brick and mortar companies and send them out of business while devastating local economies, has bought the paper of note because he wants the truth to be told. And we've told you about their conflicts of interest before, right? So he also has a deal with the CIA, $600 million. The CIA has a contract with Amazon, Jeff Bezos. And when this is brought up to their reporters, like it was on Twitter, Russ G. Lewis brought that up to their political reporter. He dismissed it, said, well, I can hardly brush aside the reporting of hangthebankers.com. He said, hey, look, the Washington Post has a $600 million deal with the CIA, and he links to hangthebankers.com, which sounds like a good website as far as I'm concerned. And so their reporter just dismissed it, and then he comes back with another link from another website, and he then admits it was real, the first thing he was saying, and then dismisses it again. He goes, it was Bezos, not the Post. Now go away, meaning that Bezos doesn't have any influence over the Post. Even though he has massive conflict of interest that lots of media watchdog agencies have made a big deal out of this. But according to the Washington Post political reporter, not a big deal, has no influence over what they do. Well, guess what? The conflicts of interest are real. And of course, Jeff Bezos has complete control over his journalists because he pays them. He bought him a new building. He gives them money. They do exactly what he wants. Bezos bans Washington Post staff from criticizing corporate advertisers on social media. That's the headline. But if you remember, the reporters tell you that he has no... Jeff Bezos, that's got the Bezos. It has nothing to do with us. You know how the owners of a news agency have no effect on the news they report. You know how Comcast didn't fire Phil Donahue. You know how MSNBC did not fire Phil Donahue. Comcast did not fire Ed Schultz. Yeah, okay, I got you. Okay.
Well, let's not forget who we're dealing with, too. Like, Jeff, this guy has his hand in food now because he owns Whole Foods. He has a big hand in distribution because he owns Amazon. He has a deal with the intelligence agency, and he owns a newspaper. This is something out of a Superman movie plot. Like, seriously, this guy makes Lex Luthor look like his only offense was jaywalking. But this is real.
This is real. And their reporters will tell you to ignore it. Ignore it. What are you going to believe? The Washington Post reporter or your lying eyes? Okay? So here it is. And here exactly what we talked about. And it's proof. They'll explicitly trying to curtail what the reporters say. Right there. They're not making a secret of it. Just like the politicians these days cheat and steal right out in the open. So does Jeff Bezos. He sits on a Pentagon board. Did you know that? He also has a $600 million deal with the CIA. And he owns the political paper of note. And you think you get any truth from that paper about anything to do with our economy or foreign policy? You don't. And so so here they are explicitly telling their reporters and the people who work for them, you don't insult our advertisers. Well, that just makes sense. People go, well, that makes sense. They're supporting. Why would you want to? Well, first of all, let's get to the policy, which took effect in May, now prohibits Post employees from using social media in such a way that adversely affects the Post customers, advertisers, subscribers, vendors, suppliers, or partners. So anybody. So don't offend anybody. According to the policy, the paper's management team reserves the right to take disciplinary action against violators up to and including termination of employment. A clause of the policy cited by the Washingtonian also encourages employees to rat out other employees for potentially violating the policy. In fact, this the Washington Post says, if you have any reason to believe that an employee may be in violation of the Post social media policy, you should contact the Post Human Resource Department.
Because nothing says good working environment like an incentive to rat out your coworkers. Don't forget the company picnic this Saturday.
This new policy offers a simple loophole to so get this. So if you don't, but they're allowed to criticize companies that don't advertise with the Washington Post. So this article, Mint Press, makes the point. So here's a good way to make sure that Washington Post journalists don't write anything bad about your company. Become an advertiser of the Washington Post.
And in case you were curious, no, the Jimmy Dore Show does not advertise with the Washington Post. If you know anything about our history with the paper.
So Mint Press says, the new policy offers a simple loophole to corporations that wish to avoid criticism from the Post, as becoming a sponsor of the paper would quickly put an end to any unfavorable coverage. And who are some of these companies that advertise with? Among the Washington Post advertisers are corporate giants like GlaxoSmithKline, Bank of America, and the Coke Industries.
Some small mom and pops just trying to get a leg up. I get it. I need that newspaper.
Right? So now their reporters can't say anything on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere that would offend or adversely affect Bank of America, the Koch brothers. Oligarchs stick together, baby. Predatory capitalists stick together. And the journalists do their bidding. Those Washington Post reporters who said that stuff is a tool. A willing mouthpiece of the oligarchs and the establishment. In fact, shutting down a regular person, shaming them for pointing out what's clear, what's obvious. Shaming them. That's what the establishment does. They wag their finger and shame you and try to gaslight you to shut up. And that's what the Washington Post reporter did. And that's what they're trying to do to their own reporters. They're trying to scare them into shutting up.
Well, and let's keep in mind, this is how corporate media gets their advertisers now in general. I mean, anybody with who's paying attention at all knows people are fleeing from cable news and most corporate media by the dozens. It is a sinking Titanic. So who are their main advertisers? Oil and gas companies and stuff like that. They're not trying to get the word out. They're trying to make sure their coverage is favorable. Yes. And now here you have an outlet that makes no bones about it. They straight up say, yes, if you advertise with us, we ain't going to print anything negative.
There you go. With the new policy, social media posts criticizing GlaxoSmithKline's habit of making false and misleading claims about its products, inflating prices, and withholding crucial drug safety information from the government will no longer be made by Post employees. What a capitalistic frickin' nightmare this is, huh? The policy also suggests that criticisms of Bank of America, one of the nation's most lawless banks, and a key player in provoking the 2008 financial crisis, will go unvoiced. Criticisms of Bank of America will go unvoiced. As well those regarding the toxic empire that is the Koch Industries, an integral part of the U.S. fracking industry. Can't write anything that adversely affects them. Long before this latest policy was put into effect, some had speculated that the connections between the CIA and the Post were already affecting reporting. That's weird because the Washington Post reporter on Twitter told us we're all stupid if we think that. That we should all go away. What a good reporter, huh? What a good reporter. For example, last year, the Post openly called for the prosecution of Snowden, despite having previously used the whistleblowers' leaks for their Pulitzer Prize-winning report on illegal NSA spying. So when the Post calls for the prosecution of Edward Snowden, despite having previously used the whistleblowers' leaks for their Pulitzer Prize-winning report on illegal NSA spying, when they call for it, they're doing it at the behest of the CIA. That's why they're doing that. That's why the Washington Post is doing that. They're doing that at the behest of the CIA. And what they also don't tell you is that they have a deal with the CIA for $600 million, worth twice what Jeff Bezos paid for that goddamn paper. So who do you think he cares more about, the fucking paper or the fucking deal he has with the CIA worth $600 million, which is double what he paid for the paper, which, by the way, will be ongoing in perpetuity with the CIA? Who do you think he cares more about? You know goddamn right what he cares about. So, and they don't put a disclaimer next to that thing where they urge for Edward Snowden to be prosecuted. They don't put a disclaimer. We have a deal with the CIA and we're compromised. So that's unethical. And the reason why they don't do that is because they're unethical. And that Washington Post reporter is unethical. And he knows it. They're unethical. Not a little bit. The whole fucking thing is. And yes, does the Washington Post still have good reporting done in their newspaper? Yes, it does. They report on some stuff really well when it has nothing to do with the CIA, Jeff Bezos, foreign policy, Amazon's distribution, the way they trade. So anything that has to do with the economy, because half of all online purchases go through Amazon.com. Did you know that? So yes, the Washington Post does a lot of good job when it doesn't have to cover anything that has to do with Jeff Bezos, Amazon, the Washington Post, any of its advertisers. So they do still do good work, but just not around any of that stuff. And then they'll have their reporters go on Twitter to lie to the public about it and gaslight them. That's a good reporter.
If you're looking for sports scores, they got you covered.
Yeah.
Anything else?
They hand over their editorial page to lobbyists for foreign governments, and they don't tell you. That's the Washington Post. While criticism of the CIA is not technically prohibited by the new policy,
Oh, really?
former Post reporters have suggested that making such criticisms could endanger one's career. As former Post writer John Hanrahan told Alternet in 2013, Post reporters and editors are aware that Bezos, as majority owner of Amazon, has a financial stake in maintaining good relationship with the CIA. And this sends a clear message to even the hardest-nosed journalists that making the CIA look bad might not be a good career move.
Reporters are encouraged to play dumb on Twitter. Is that in there?
That
should be in there.
Right?
That should be in there. Reporters are encouraged to play dumb on Twitter, and boy, do they. I didn't know anything about it. Oh, here's another link. Oh, I guess I did. Shut up. It's nothing. That's the integrity of a Washington Post field reporter. And the Washington Post. So now it's official. The Washington Post completely control. Come on. What else do you need to know? You don't think Jeff Bezos controls his journalists? Do you think anybody writes a story he's upset with that doesn't get fucking fired or disciplined? Do you think that? Do you know that the Washington Post hasn't written a goddamn story about Jeff Bezos' tech critical of him? In fact, they wrote one. In the Washington Post, 0. A union writer for the Post wrote something about Jeff Bezos' bad business practices with his workers in Huffington Post, and they disciplined him at the Washington Post for writing something. And that's another video we're going to cover it. Don't believe me. So they're already disciplining people at the Washington Post for writing stuff critical of Jeff Bezos and Amazon.com's business practices. They're already. That's what's coming. That's another video. So there you go. I appreciate that Washington Post reporter lying on Twitter to everybody. All his how many hundreds of thousands of followers he has. Lied to that guy who asked him, then gaslit him. That's called having no integrity. That's called taking a paycheck to be a mouthpiece for the establishment. Gladly and willingly. And that's why they hired him. That's why they hire people at the Post. They just hired John Podesta. You think they hired him for his insight?
So I was just, when you were talking about this, I'm like, I'm going to go to the Washington Post website and see what is an advertiser on it, right? Okay. So I looked up, Samsung is right there on the side, just flashing Samsung. And so I just put it, I typed in, I'm like, oh, Samsung, are they good to unions? Oh, no. Samsung has a history of being quite nefarious internationally with unions. Do you think they're going to do any hard-hitting story on
Samsung screwing over unions? Mm-hmm. I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess that's why we don't have any unions left in America.
And just let me give you a list of what they've done. Samsung internationally, the world's biggest corporation to account for the abuse in their supply chains, from union busting, poverty wages, insecure and unsafe working conditions, forced overtime, informal work, and modern slavery.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. I bet they'll write about that in the Washington Post. It was Bezos, not the Post. Now go away. What a real insightful reporter. Has no idea how stuff works. And then when you point it out to him, he'll lie to you to protect his corporate oligarchs. That's what the Washington Post writers do. There you go. That's what the Washington Post management's doing.
Well, and let's not forget their slogan that they kind of borrowed from Home Depot. Democracy dies in darkness, and we can help.
The Washington Post. Portland, Oregon, the Jimmy Dore Show is coming to the Alberta Rose Theater November 12th. And we're going to Burbank, California, November 6th. And the Hollywood Improv on October 16th. There's a link for tickets right down there. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for all links for all shows.